Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's budget day in India. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the union budget for a record 9th time. No other finance minister has presented 9 consecutive union budgets. Although overall, Morarji Desai presented 10 budgets. Today's speech was 83 minutes long. It laid the roadmap for long-term growth and spelled out interventions for short-term challenges. Prime Minister Modi called it historic. He called the budget a highway of opportunities. But investors were not impressed. Indian stock markets fell sharply and closed the day in the red. We'll tell you why. We'll also discuss the highlights of the budget, the hits and the misses, the increased defence spending, what's costlier, what's cheaper, what do India's overseas partners get from the budget, and how geopolitics has shaped India's economic decisions. This is a budget special edition of Vantage. First up, the headlines this Sunday. Pakistani forces hunt for the perpetrators behind a string of attacks in Balochistan on Friday and Saturday. More than 190 people were killed, including 145 attackers. The militants stormed banks, jails, police stations and military installations. The Baloch Liberation Army, or BLA, has claimed responsibility for these attacks. Iran's supreme leader compares the recent anti-government protests to a coup. Khamenei warned that any US attack on Tehran would trigger a regional war. Donald Trump has been threatening to intervene since the Islamic Republic's deadly crackdown on protesters. Meanwhile, in a retaliatory move, Iran has declared European armies, quote-unquote, terrorist groups. Iraq's parliament postpones the election of the country's new president once again. This is the second time the parliament has done so. It comes amid intense political horse trading and pressure from the US over the new prime minister. Donald Trump has threatened to stop helping Iraq if Nouri al-Maliki is elected the next premier. A snowstorm brings sub-zero temperatures and travel disruptions to many parts of southern United States. More than 600 flights were cancelled at Atlanta's International Airport. North Carolina reported 750 car crashes on Saturday. This comes a week after a monster storm killed more than 100 people in the country. Pakistan to boycott its match against India in the T20 World Cup. The Shehbaz Sharif government has instructed its cricket board to do so, but they are yet to inform the International Cricket Council. Earlier, Pakistan had threatened to boycott the entire tournament. The India-Pakistan clash was to take place in Colombo on the 15th of February. And Carlos Alcaraz wins the Australian Open title for the first time. The world number 1 beat Novak Djokovic in 4 sets. With this win, 22-year-old Alcaraz becomes the youngest man to complete a career Grand Slam. Djokovic has 10 Australian Open titles. This is his first ever loss in the finals in Melbourne.
Enhancement of construction and infrastructure equipments, high-speed rail corridors as growth connectors. Individual persons resident outside India will be permitted to invest in equity instruments, medical tourism services, creation of 5 tourism destinations in 5 Purvodaya states. I commend the budget to this august house. Jai Hind.
It's budget day in India. Every year, the budget is presented on the 1st of February. This year, it fell on a Sunday, so the government took an unusual step. It presented the union budget on a Sunday. Even the stock markets were open. And that alone should tell you something. This is not a routine budget. It comes at a time when India stands at a crossroads. It faces a challenging global environment. Trade wars and tariffs are testing India's long-term resilience, and that is why this year's budget assumes greater significance. The expectations were high. The budget was supposed to do 2 things: chart a short-term course for a volatile world and lay out a long-term roadmap for India's economic future. The question is, did it deliver? We'd say it's a mixed bag. And tonight on the show, we'll explain why we say this, but we'll start with the highlights of the budget. Number 1, the budget spelled out 3 clear priorities. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman called them the 3 kartavyas, or the 3 duties. 1, accelerate growth so that the economy can withstand global shocks. 2, help every Indian fulfill their potential through education, innovation and job creation. And 3, ensure inclusive development and access to resources for all. so that no family, no village, no state is left behind.
We are inspired by three kartavya. Our first kartavya is to accelerate and sustain economic growth. Our second kartavya is to fulfill aspirations of our people. Our third kartavya, aligned with our vision of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, is to ensure that every family, community, region, and sector has access to resources, amenities, and opportunities for meaningful participation.
These three priorities set the tone for budgetary allocations today. Highlight number 2, capital expenditure. This time it is 12.12 lakh crore rupees. That's what the government plans to spend. 12.2 lakh crore rupees. That's around 133 billion US dollars. And this is a record allocation. It's a 9% increase from last year. Now, what is capital expenditure? This is spending on building long-term assets, things like roads, railways, airports, bridges, hospitals. The money you spend on building these. This investment will help create jobs and boost productivity in the long term.
Public capital expenditure has increased manifold from 2 lakh crore in 2014-15 to an allocation of 11.2 lakh crore in BE 25-26. In this coming year, that is financial year 2026-27, I propose to increase it to 12.2 lakh crores to continue the momentum.
Highlight number 3, semiconductors or chips that run modern life. They power all your gadgets, everything from your phones to laptops to cars and defense systems. Chips are the new oil, and India wants to make them at home. So the finance minister has announced a revamped plan. It's called the India Semiconductor Mission 2.0.
India Semiconductor Mission 1.0 expanded India's semiconductor sector capabilities. Building on this, we will launch ISM 2.0 to produce equipment and materials, design full-stack Indian IP, and fortify supply chains. We will also focus on industry-led research and training centers to develop technology and skilled workforce.
The idea is to design chips at home, build equipment and create IPs or intellectual properties, basically India's own patents in chip design and manufacturing. And this is part of a larger plan. The government's push in the electronics manufacturing space. It's significant both economically and geopolitically because today China dominates electronics and chip manufacturing. It has a stranglehold on this industry, and Taiwan and the US dominate chip design. India wants to become self-reliant in both these areas. It wants to secure supply chains, upskill its workers, and reduce dependence on imports. And for this, the government has set aside 40,000 crore rupees. This is over $4 billion, 40,000 crores. This is linked to highlight number 4, the focus on rare earths. These are critical minerals used for making chips and electronics. For India to win the semiconductor race, it needs a steady supply of rare earths. Again, China controls 90% of the world's rare earths, and it has weaponized this dominance. China has throttled supplies in the past, so India wants to build alternative supply chains. And in today's budget, the government has proposed rare earth corridors in 4 Indian states.
A scheme for rare earth permanent magnets was launched in 2025 November. We now propose to support the mineral-rich states of Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu to establish dedicated rare earth corridors to promote mining, processing, research and manufacturing.
Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, these 4 states will get rare earth corridors. They will support mining, processing, research and manufacturing activities. The aim is to unlock India's own mineral wealth and insulate the economy from external shocks. And why were these 4 states chosen? Because they are known to be mineral rich. They already have mining and processing infrastructure. Also, Kerala and Tamil Nadu go to the polls this year, and typically union budgets lean towards poll-bound states. Highlight number 5, rail connectivity. For years, Indian budgets focused on highways to achieve faster movement of goods. Now, the same strategy is being extended to railways. This year, the government has proposed 7 new high-speed rail corridors.
We will develop 7 high-speed rail corridors between cities as growth connectors, namely Mumbai to Pune, Pune to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Bengaluru, Hyderabad to Chennai, Chennai to Bengaluru, Delhi to Varanasi, Varanasi to Siliguri.
These 7 rail corridors will connect some of India's biggest urban centres like Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bengaluru and Delhi. And these are called growth connectors. The logic is simple. Better transport will boost trade, it will speed up travel and link key economic centres with smaller towns. Highlight number 6 focuses on small businesses or MSMEs, the micro, small and medium enterprises. The government wants to support them, it wants to cushion them from tariff shocks and help create jobs. And for this, a 10,000 crore rupee fund has been announced. That's over $1 billion. The fund will support small companies and businesses. Think of this as venture capital investment for India's small entrepreneurs. Highlight number 7, the textile industry. It's been the hardest hit by US President Trump's 50% tariff. Now, New Delhi has launched a 5-part integrated scheme to boost the textile industry.
For the labor-intensive textile sector, I propose an integrated program with 5 subparts. 1. The National Fiber Scheme for self-reliance in natural fibers, such as silk, wool and jute, man-made fibers and new age fibers. Textile expansion and employment scheme to modernize traditional clusters with capital support for machinery, technology upgradation and common testing and certification centers. 3. The National Handloom and Handicraft Program to integrate and strengthen existing schemes and ensure targeted support for weavers and artisans.
Highlight number 8, promoting India in biopharma. That's a 10,000 crore rupee investment in biopharmaceuticals. Biopharma is a specialized field. It involves creating advanced medicines from living cells, not chemicals. You're talking about stuff like vaccines, gene therapies, and cutting-edge cancer treatments. India already has an edge in these areas. The government wants to build on it. This investment will be spread out over a period of 5 years.
I propose the Biopharma Shakti with an outlay of 10,000 crores over the next 5 years. This will build the ecosystem for domestic production of biologics and biosimilars. The strategy will include a biopharma-focused network with 3 new national institutes of pharmaceutical education and research, popularly known as NIPERs, and upgrading 7 existing ones. It will also create a network of 1,000 accredited India clinical trials sites.
Highlight number 9 is content creation, and this is a first. The government wants to invest in training digital content creators, also those involved in animation, visual effects, gaming and comics. Together they are called the AVGC sector, or simply the orange economy. The government wants to invest in it. It plans to set up labs in schools and colleges for this.
India's animation, visual effects, gaming and comics sector, AVGC sector, is a growing industry projected to require 2 million professionals by 2030. I propose to support the Indian Institute of Creative Technologies, Mumbai, in setting up AVGC content creator labs in 15,000 secondary schools all over the country and 500 colleges.
And finally, highlight number 10, developing India as a logistics hub. The budget has a new scheme, a $1 billion fund to promote the manufacturing of containers. The goal is to secure India's place in global supply chains.
I also propose a scheme for container manufacturing to create a globally competitive container manufacturing ecosystem with a budgetary allocation of 10,000 crores over a 5-year period.
So those were the top highlights, the top 10. Beyond this, it's worth noting that the government has met its fiscal deficit target. The target they set was 4.4% of the GDP. Fiscal deficit, as you know, means the difference between what you spend and what you earn. A deficit arises when the government has to borrow money to meet its expenses. Now, the target for this deficit was 4.4% of the GDP. The government hopes to meet it this time. Another noteworthy announcement was on healthcare. India wants to promote medical tourism. 5 hubs will be developed for this, and states will lead the projects with support from the private sector. The idea is to attract patients from abroad, offer them high-quality treatment at lower costs. And mental health was also mentioned in the budget. A major facility has been announced for the state of Jharkhand. The national institutes in Ranchi and Tezpur that focus on mental health and neurosciences will also be upgraded. Plus, there is a push for women in science to make STEM education accessible for girls. STEM means science, technology, engineering, and math. And the budget talks about developing Buddhist tourism circuits. This is something that New Delhi has been pushing for to leverage religion and culture and build India's soft power. But coming back to the key highlights, today's budget broadly looks at 2 goals: to maintain growth and to support businesses, to help them scale up, to shield them from global shocks. And for this, the plan is to spend more and spend quickly. The budget has refrained from any major policy changes. It has failed to impress investors. The markets fell today. We'll tell you why in our next story. Stock markets reflect sentiment, and that's also true for budget day. As the union budget was announced in Parliament, the markets on Dalal Street gave a real-time reaction, and they spoke quite clearly. This was a special Sunday session for the budget. At first, everything looked calm. In fact, the markets opened in the green today. Investors were expecting a steady and pro-growth budget, one that would support investment and avoid big shocks. But that mood did not last long. As the budget speech progressed, investors started selling. By the time the finance minister had finished speaking, the markets had fallen sharply. Both the Sensex and the Nifty closed in the red today. These are India's main market indicators. They tell us how the biggest companies in the country are doing. And when they fall, it means that most large stocks are being sold. The Sensex lost more than 1,500 points today. It closed at a little over 80,700. At one point, it was down by more than 2,800 points in today's trade, the Sensex. The Nifty 50 lost nearly 500 points. It closed at over 24,800. Earlier in the day, it had slipped below the 24,600 mark. And this was the worst budget day performance for Indian markets in 6 years. The worst performance in 6 years on budget day. So what explains this reaction? What was it that spooked investors? Today, we'll try to break it down. First of all, what were the markets expecting? 2 things: relief and confidence. Relief for capital markets and a confidence for foreign investors. None of it was delivered in the budget. Instead, the biggest announcement for the markets was a tax hike. The government has raised a tax called the STT, the Securities Transaction Tax. What is this tax? What is the STT? It's a tax that you pay every time you buy or sell shares or futures or options. It's a tax that you pay on any transaction you do in the stock market. Now, the government has increased this tax only for futures and options. Now, what are futures and options? These are what you call derivative contracts. These are bets on where the market will go next, futures and options. And they form a huge part of daily trading in India. Today's budget targeted this trade. It has raised taxes on futures and options. On futures, the tax went up from 0.02% to 0.05%. It may look like a small number, but this is a 150% jump. And for options, there are 2 parts. And taxes have been increased on both these parts. The first is called option premium. This is the price you pay to buy an option. It's like an entry fee. You pay it even if you never use the option. This tax has gone up from 0.1% to 0.15%. The second part is the option exercise. This happens when a trader actually uses the option, when they buy or sell a share at the agreed price. And here the tax has gone up from 0.125% to 0.15%. Again, these sound like small figures, but for traders who buy and sell several times a day, this is a big cost increase. Because higher cost means lower profit. Lower profit means less trading, and less trading means less money in the market. So why did the government raise this tax? Why did they raise the STT? For a couple of reasons. First of all, the government says derivatives trading has grown too fast in India. Retail investors are putting a lot of money in futures and options, and most of them are losing this money. So the tax hike is basically meant to reduce speculation. It is meant to protect small traders. That is the government's logic. Secondly, the government also sees this as a revenue source, of course. You see, high-frequency trading generates huge turnover. So this tax means more money for the treasury. But like I said, investors were not expecting this. In fact, they wanted the government to cut the STT.
No, the market participants have, expressed a view that they'd like to see some reduction in STT, which is seen as the major contributor of the cost of trading.
So the budget delivered the very opposite of what they were hoping for. And the result was this. At least 15 of the 16 major sectors ended in the red today. Only one sector gained, and that was IT, or information technology. And here's what the market reaction tells us. They're not doubting India's growth story. They just don't like the high cost of participating in it. And today's budget has only raised that cost of participation, so investors responded by selling. Now, let's be honest, budgets are boring. Pages full of numbers, long speeches, and big words that mean very little to most people. But India's budget 2026 is also about something else. It's also about geopolitics. We live in a world where supply chains are weapons, where technology decides wars, and where countries do not trade anymore, they pressurize you. In this setting, India's budget zeroes in on 4 strategic sectors: rare earths, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and nuclear power. And this is a response, a direct response to global pressure and power play. Tonight, we'll tell you how. And we're starting with rare earths. Rare earths are a group of 17 minerals. You don't see them, you don't talk about them in your day-to-day conversations, but your life will collapse without them. Electric vehicles, wind turbines, missiles, fighter jets, AI servers, all of them need rare earths. The problem is China controls them. China controls the processing of most of the world's rare earth minerals, not because others do not have them, but because China built the ecosystem much before the others. So India has decided to set up dedicated rare earth corridors. They will be located in 4 states: Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu. And what will they do? Mining, processing, research, and manufacturing.
A scheme for rare earth permanent magnets was launched in 2025 November. We now propose to support the mineral-rich states of Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu to establish dedicated rare earth corridors to promote mining, processing, research, and manufacturing.
India has rare earth reserves, especially monazite sands, but India lacks processing capability. This corridor model is an attempt to fix that. Instead of exporting raw material, India wants to process domestically. India wants to manufacture magnets at home and supply to EVs, defense, and renewables in India. Again, this is a direct response to counter China's leverage in the sector. Then we come to semiconductors. If rare earths are the muscle, semiconductors are the brain. Your phones, cars, missiles, and AI, they cannot function without semiconductor chips. The US has already weaponized chips. It is locked in a chip war with China. India needs to urgently join this race, and that is why the budget doubles down on the India Semiconductor Mission 2.0. It's a 40,000 crore rupee push for semiconductor and electronics manufacturing. The focus is no longer just on factories. It's a whole range of things, from Indian designed chips to Indian intellectual property, Indian equipment and material, and Indian talent.
India's Semiconductor Mission 1.0 expanded India's semiconductor sector capabilities. Building on this, we will launch ISM 2.0 to produce equipment and materials, design full-stack Indian IP, and fortify supply chains. We will also focus on industry-led research and training centers to develop technology and skilled workforce.
Now, India's semiconductor demand is growing. In the next 5 years, India will account for nearly 10% of global demand. 10% of the global demand will come from India. But chip fabrication plants take 3 to 5 years to build, which is why this budget emphasizes on three things: long-term policy certainty, domestic value addition, and design plus manufacturing. India's target is simple. It wants to become one of the top 4 semiconductor manufacturing nations by 2032. And now to one of the most repeated terms in this budget: artificial intelligence. That's our third sector. AI was mentioned some 11 times by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman today. That's the highest ever in an Indian budget that AI has found mention. And AI is critical for any country's future. If you do not build AI domestically, you import intelligence and you export control. That's what you end up doing. So India has a plan. One is a tax holiday till 2047. This is for foreign cloud and data center companies, but only those who operate through Indian sellers. They will get a tax break till 2047. Number 2, funding for India AI mission and the National Quantum Mission. Number 3, a research, development and innovation fund. And number 4, the launch of Bharat Vistar. This is a multilingual AI platform for agriculture and rural advisory.
I propose to 1. Support the Artificial Limbs Manufacturing Corporation of India, ALIMCO, to set up and to scale up production of assistive devices, invest in R&D and AI integration, strengthen PM Divyasha Kendras, and support setting up of assistive technology marts as modern retail style centers where Divyangjan and senior citizens can see, try and purchase assistive products.
This brings us to our next sector, and that is nuclear power. You see, India is investing in solar and green energy, but neither runs 24/7. Also, data centers require a lot of electricity, and that is where nuclear power comes in. India has extended customs duty exemptions on nuclear project imports till 2035. So no customs duty till 2035. This applies to all nuclear plants.
Nuclear power. I propose to extend the existing basic customs duty exemption on imports of goods required for nuclear power projects till the year 2035 and expand it for all nuclear plants irrespective of their capacity.
This is important because nuclear projects are expensive. They're capital heavy and slow to scale. And with this move, the government is trying to reduce costs. It gives companies certainty and it opens the door for private participation. India currently gets only about 3% of its nuclear power from plants. Only about 3% of its power, rather, from nuclear plants. But the long-term target is ambitious. The goal is to build 100 gigawatts of nuclear capacity by 2047. 100 gigawatts. Let me put that in context. 1 gigawatt is enough to power approximately 700,000 to 1 million homes. India's current capacity is 8.8 gigawatts. The aim is to take it up to 100. So this is a very ambitious target and a massive bet. And there's one more important move in the budget. Customs duty reforms. India has cut tariffs on key capital goods and raw materials, especially those needed for critical mineral processing, lithium-ion batteries, solar glass and rare earth inputs like monazite. The message is clear: lower input costs and stronger domestic manufacturing.
It is proposed to provide basic customs duty exemption to the import of capital goods required for the processing of critical minerals in India.
This also helps exporters hit by US tariff pressure. And there's another US angle to this as well. India is in the middle of negotiating a trade deal with Washington. And one of America's big demands has been this: lower input costs and more open supply chains. So India is signaling alignment. If you put all these things together, here's what the budget says. Economic policy and geopolitics are inseparable. India is responding to China's control over rare earths, America's chip restrictions, the global AI arms race, and energy insecurity. This budget is not about instant results, it's about reducing strategic dependence and securing supply chains. So you could say that India is not just budgeting for growth, it is budgeting for power in a divided world. Now let's talk about defense. Traditionally, defense gets the largest share of the budget, and this year is no exception. In fact, the numbers have only grown bigger. A record 7.85 lakh crore rupees has been allocated for defense. 7.85 lakh crores is more than 80 billion US dollars, 80. It's the highest ever in India. And what stands out in this is the money for new weapons. India is spending big on upgrades. We're talking about more than $23 billion. This is a clear signal of intent. India is prioritizing military upgrades, and the timing is crucial. Last year, during Operation Sindoor, India found itself in a military standoff with Pakistan. At the same time, the challenge from China has not eased. Together, this defines India's threat landscape, and it explains the higher spending on boosting defense. Our next report gives you a breakdown on how this money will be spent.
India has unveiled its biggest ever defense budget, 7.85 lakh crore rupees, or about $86 billion. That is up from 6.81 lakh crore last year. That's around $74 billion. But this number is not just about size, it signals a shift in mindset, from reactive defense to long-term preparation. From managing borders to modernizing battle readiness. Let us break this down. Out of that 7.85 lakh crore, 2.2 lakh crore has been set aside for capital expenditure. What does that mean? Capital expenditure, or CapEx, is the money spent on buying new weapons. New aircraft, new tanks, new submarines, new systems for surveillance, targeting, and response. This is money to build the future military, and the increase is significant. Last year, this figure was 1.86 lakh crore. This year, 2.2 lakh crore, or about 23 billion. That is an 18% increase in 1 year. Why now? The answer lies in India's threat landscape. In May last year, India and Pakistan exchanged artillery and missile fire. The standoff lasted 4 days, but it pushed both sides to the edge and took both armies back to war postures. Pakistan responded by raising its defense budget by 20%. India has responded by spending smarter and heavier, not just on force levels, but on advanced platforms. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh made it clear this is about modernizing all three services: the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. And the roadmap is already visible. India has cleared a massive fighter jet deal, 114 Rafales to be acquired and co-produced with France. The price tag? In billions of dollars. But more importantly, this fills a long-standing gap in air power. Then there is the submarine deal with Germany. It is still being finalized. But if it is signed, it will be one of the largest defense agreements in India's history. For years, one of the biggest criticisms of India's defense budget was this: too much went to salaries and pensions. Less than a third of India's defense spending was used for buying new equipment. The rest went into fixed costs, like salaries, pensions, and administrative overheads. This year, the shift is clear. 2.2 lakh crore rupees will be going directly into new assets. That is a deliberate rebalancing, and it is happening alongside another major change. India is shifting away from imports and pushing for domestic production. Make in India now applies to missiles, drones, artillery, naval vessels, and AI-based defense systems. What India is trying to do now is build a self-reliant defense ecosystem. Not just rely on foreign technology, but build it, design it, test it, and deploy it. That means investing in research, in the domestic industry, and in skilled manpower. This budget does not give us full details on R&D spending, but it does send a signal to defense startups and PSUs to gear up. There is another thing worth noting. India's strategic posture is also evolving, from border security to maritime dominance, from low-end skirmishes to high-tech deterrence. This means creating space for new technologies, from satellites and space-based systems to cyber defense units and autonomous platforms. This budget begins to fund that transition, but ultimately, it all comes down to execution.
So that was our defense allocation. Now let's talk about the Ministry of External Affairs. About 22,118 crore rupees have been allocated to India's foreign ministry. That's an increase of 7.8%. And where does this money go? On a whole lot of things, but a quarter of it is given to other countries, especially those in the neighbourhood, countries like Bhutan. This year it is set to receive 40% of India's foreign aid, just Bhutan. Sri Lanka and Nepal will also get more funds, but aid for Bangladesh has been cut into half. Our next report tells you why.
Let's begin with the headline. In Budget 2026 to 27, India has set aside 5,685 crore rupees as grants and development aid to foreign countries. This money comes under the Ministry of External Affairs, whose total budget now stands at 22,118 crore rupees, up from last year. Now this is strategic spending, because India lives in a tough neighbourhood. Unstable governments, military coups, debt traps and Chinese influence. So India follows what it calls the neighbourhood first policy. The logic is simple. If your neighbourhood is unstable, your house will never be safe. This aid gives India diplomatic leverage. The biggest beneficiary is Bhutan, which gets 2,288 crore rupees in this budget. That's almost 40% of India's total foreign aid. Why? Because Bhutan isn't just a neighbour, it's a strategic partner. India builds Bhutan's hydropower projects and then buys that electricity. India also helps fund Bhutan's development plans. And here's the key point. Every dam India builds in Bhutan is also a strategic buffer against China. So, New Delhi is doubling down on its most reliable neighbour. Next comes Nepal, which will get 800 crore rupees. Slightly lower than last year's revised estimate. Nepal matters because it sits right on India's northern border. Political instability there spills over quickly, and China has been aggressively courting Kathmandu. So, India is trying keeping Nepal close. Then there's Sri Lanka, which will get 400 crore rupees. That's up by 100 crores from 2025. Remember, India stepped in when Sri Lanka was collapsing economically. This monetary increase signals that India wants Sri Lanka to recover, but without falling back into China's debt trap. Aid to Afghanistan has also been increased to 150 crore rupees. This is important. It comes after India upgraded its mission in Kabul and welcomed Taliban ministers. New Delhi has continued development projects across Afghanistan. This tells us India is taking a pragmatic approach. No grand statements or recognition drama, just quiet engagement, because Afghanistan still matters for regional security. Now on to the budget cuts. Bangladesh's aid has been slashed to 60 crore rupees. Last year it was 120 crore rupees. Why the cut? Because ties have deteriorated sharply since 2024. Under the Muhammad Yunus regime, there's been political unrest, attacks on minorities, anti-India protests, and a visible tilt towards Pakistan. India has raised concerns repeatedly. Even Prime Minister Modi raised it directly with Bangladesh's leadership. So the message in this budget is blunt. Strategic distance has a financial cost. Also, aid to Maldives has dropped to 550 crore rupees. Aid to Myanmar has also fallen to 300 crore rupees. Another major cut is for the Chabahar port in Iran. Last year, India allocated 400 crore rupees in revised estimates. This year, it is zero. Why? Because of US sanctions on Iran. India's waiver to work on Chabahar expires in April. So, this is strategic realism. India still sees Chabahar as crucial, but for now, it has hit the pause button on it. New Delhi is also spending abroad beyond South Asia. Africa gets 225 crore rupees. Latin America sees an increase to 120 crore rupees. Disaster relief stays at 80 crore rupees. This shows India wants to be seen as a global South partner, not just a regional power. So what does this budget signify? In today's world, foreign policy isn't just written in speeches, it's also written in budgets. And Budget 2026 tells a very clear story. India is choosing its friends carefully.
Our next story is about how the budget impacts your wallet. Every year, the budget does two things. It lowers costs on some things, it raises the costs on some other items. And the same has happened this year. Healthcare has gotten a major relief. Cancer drugs are cheaper. So is foreign education. But your coffee, that might get more expensive. And some luxury goods will also become costlier. Our next report breaks it down.
Every year, India's union budget arrives with a promise. Lower costs, better access, more opportunities. But the reality is always more complex, because every tax cut has a trade-off. Every relief comes with a cost somewhere else. The 2026 budget is no different. Here's what just got cheaper and what's about to cost you more. First, the good news. If you or someone you know is battling cancer, there's relief. The government has scrapped import duties on cancer drugs. These aren't your everyday medicines. They are often imported, expensive, and out of reach for many families. Now, they'll cost less.
To provide relief to patients, particularly those suffering from cancer, I propose to exempt basic customs duty on 17 drugs or medicines. I propose also to add 7 more rare diseases for the purposes of exempting import duties.
But healthcare isn't the only area that stands to benefit. Overseas tour packages will now be cheaper. The government has cut the tax collected at source. That reduces the upfront cost for travelers. Foreign education is also going to be more affordable.
I propose to reduce TCS rate for pursuing education and for medical purposes under the Liberalized Remittance Scheme, popularly known as LRS, from 5% to 2%.
For households, there are savings on everyday items. Microwave ovens and their components will cost less after customs duties were reduced. Lower manufacturing costs could mean lower prices at retail. There's also strategic relief in aviation.
It is proposed to exempt basic customs duty on raw materials imported for the manufacture of parts of aircraft to be used in maintenance, repair, or overall requirements by units in the defense sector.
The push for clean mobility also remains. Lithium-ion cells and energy transition equipment continue to have zero basic customs duty. That keeps battery costs down for electric two-wheelers, cars, and buses. And for frequent travelers, there's a change worth noting. Personal imports like laptops, mobile phones, and cameras now attract 10% customs duty instead of 20%. That's a significant reduction for those who travel often. But now, let's talk about what's about to sting. Love your specialty coffee? Brace yourself. Coffee roasting and brewing machines just lost their tax exemptions. So that cappuccino at your favorite cafe, it might now cost more. Certain fertilizer inputs have also become more expensive. That may increase costs for agriculture. Some luxury goods, such as imported alcohol and high-end watches, also face higher taxes. And if you're in the stock market, futures and options trading just became costlier. But there's another cost that has gone up. Income tax penalties have been raised too. If you misreport your income, the penalty is now 100% of the tax amount. That's double the hit. And there's also a new penalty for failing to disclose movable assets. So the message of this budget is measured. Targeted relief where health, mobility, and strategic sectors are concerned, and higher costs where revenue or regulation is the priority. The real impact won't be found in parliament debates. It will show up at the pharmacy counter while planning a holiday or weighing everyday expenses.
Have you heard of the term orange economy? If you haven't, this budget may have just introduced it to you. This year, the government has made a pivot towards creativity as an economic strategy. And I will tell you why. But first, what exactly is the orange economy? Think of it as a business of creativity, anything where ideas, not raw materials, create value. This includes films and OTT, animation and VFX, gaming and esports, comics and graphic novels, design, fashion and architecture, music, concerts and live events, YouTube creators, educators, podcasters, even cultural exports like yoga, cuisine and storytelling. So it includes a variety of things. As of today, this economy is worth roughly $30 billion in India, $30 billion. This is an estimate and it does not encapsulate all of it. This area, this sector employs about 8% of the workforce. It generates more than $11 billion in exports. And this sector is growing faster than your traditional manufacturing. So what did today's budget announce? The headline move is this: India has something called the AVGC sector, that's animation, visual effects, gaming and comics sector, AVGC. It is projected to need 2 million professionals by 2030. And to feed that demand, the government has announced the AVGC Content Creator Labs. They will be set up in secondary schools and colleges.
I propose to support the Indian Institute of Creative Technologies, Mumbai, in setting up AVGC Content Creator Labs in 15,000 secondary schools all over the country and 500 colleges. The Indian design industry is expanding rapidly, and yet there is a shortage of Indian designers. I propose to establish, through Challenge Route, a new National Institute of Design to boost design education and development in the eastern region of India.
Now, this is not a pilot project. This is mass-scale skilling. For the first time, animation, gaming, VFX and comics are being treated like serious career paths, not just hobbies. And along with this, a new National Institute of Design will be set up. India's design industry is also growing fast, but designers are in short supply. Right now, India has 7 NIDs, National Institutes of Design, 7 of them. The government wants to hone more talent, especially outside your traditional metro hubs. And the reasons behind this move are multifold. First of all, demographics. India is young. It has a young population. There are millions of digital native students. They are already creating content informally. The budget is trying to formalize that energy into skills and jobs. 2, traditional manufacturing is capital heavy. Creative industries are labor intensive, so they will employ a lot more people. 3, soft power. K-dramas did it for South Korea, anime did it for Japan, Hollywood did it for America. India already exports stories with Bollywood OTT shows and YouTube creators. Now the state wants to scale it strategically. But why start in schools and colleges? Well, that is the most interesting part. Instead of waiting for graduates, the government is saying, let's start early. Expose students to animation, design and digital tools. This model mirrors global institutions where students touch creative tech young. It also democratizes access. Not everyone can afford private film schools or design colleges, and government labs change that equation. But there's a key distinction here. The orange economy is often misunderstood as influencer culture. The government is framing it differently. This is not a push to create viral stars, and experts have warned about this. They say that without mentorship, creator labs can become distractions. The real goal is to create skilled digital professionals, not people chasing viral fame. So this budget 2026, shows that India is no longer treating creativity as culture alone. It is treating it as an employment strategy, a services growth engine, and a soft power asset. The orange economy has officially entered India's economic playbook. The success of this push, though, will depend on one thing: execution. So we've looked at what the budget promises on paper. Now let's talk about India's verdict. The responses to the budget have been mixed and divided. The government, of course, is hailing it as a long-term vision for a developed India, but critics say it ignores today's real problems. Industry leaders, meanwhile, have offered a more cautious stance. And the stock market, like I said, they had a meltdown. So the same budget, but vastly different interpretations and reactions. Our next report has more.
Item number 1.
A budget speech may be delivered in the parliament.
I present the budget for the year 2026-2027.
But its real test begins the moment it ends. This year's union budget triggered exactly that moment. A rush of reactions, applause from the government and its allies, sharp criticism from the opposition, measured praise from industry experts, and an instant response from the markets. The government was quick to set the tone. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed this year's budget as a milestone.
ये बजट 2047 के विकसित भारत की हमारी ऊंची उड़ान का मजबूत आधार है। साथियों, आज भारत जिस रिफॉर्म एक्सप्रेस पर सवार है, इस बजट से उसे नई ऊर्जा, नई गति मिलेगी। जो पाथ ब्रेकिंग रिफॉर्म्स किए गए हैं, वो एस्पिरेशन से भरे हुए भारत के साहसिक, टैलेंटेड युवाओं को उड़ने के लिए खुला आसमान देते हैं।
Prime Minister Modi described the budget as human-centric. He pointed to its focus on youth, women, infrastructure, and India's global ambition. That optimism was echoed across the ruling party and its allies. They called the budget progressive, that touched every sector as well as strengthened the idea of a developed India.
और मैं मानता हूं कि यह जन भावनाओं और जन अपेक्षाओं पर खरा उतरने वाला यह बजट है। साथ ही यह बजट प्रधानमंत्री जी के आत्मनिर्भर भारत और विकसित भारत 2047 के संकल्प को सशक्त आधार देता है, जिसमें समाज के सभी वर्गों के उत्थान के लिए समुचित प्रावधान किए गए हैं।
But on the other side of the aisle, the mood was very different. Leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi said the budget was blind to India's real crises. He pointed to joblessness, weak manufacturing, farmer distress, and falling household savings. The opposition also questioned the budget's economic thinking.
The most serious criticism of the budget speech is that the finance minister is not tired of adding a number of schemes, programs, missions, institutes, initiatives, funds, committees, hubs, etc. I leave it to your imagination how many of these will be forgotten and vanish by next year.
Some of the state leaders also joined the criticism. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee called the budget directionless and visionless.
They want to destroy the economic structure of the country, the constitutional structure of this country, the independent agency, only talking too much and less work.
Outside of politics, the reaction were a bit muted. Some industry leaders welcomed the push on infrastructure and manufacturing. The head of the National Stock Exchange praised the focus on fiscal discipline.
और एक तरह से फिस्कल डिसिप्लिन करते हुए इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को बढ़ा देते हुए एक ग्रोथ करने की जो प्रक्रिया है ये बजट में शामिल की गई है तो मुझे लग रहा है कि बहुत बेहतर बजट है मैं उसको 10 में से 10 अंक दूंगा.
Other industry bodies said the government had balanced growth with stability.
Overall, the budget is one of stability and continuity in a world where we are seeing a lot of uncertainty and change. India has emerged as one space where macroeconomic comfort, macroeconomic stability has been very high. Inflation is under control.
But not everyone was satisfied. Real estate developers said affordable housing was missing. And the stock market? It delivered its own verdict. Indices fell sharply after transaction taxes on derivatives like future and options were raised. Taken together, the reactions tell a familiar budget story. The government sees momentum and long-term vision. The opposition sees gaps and missed chances. Industry sees opportunity, albeit with caution. But the real judgment won't come from any of these voices. It will come from what actually changes on the ground in the coming months.
So what's the verdict on the budget? Good, bad or ugly? It's time for the Vantage take. Like I said earlier, it's a mixed bag. It made the right noises for long-term growth. It also made some bold allocations. But the budget has fallen short on some counts. Now, one of the major challenges or goals for India, depends on how you look at it, is to develop infra to boost growth and jobs. And here the budget makes a big promise. Record capital expenditure or capex at over 12 lakh crore. It's the highest ever allocation on capital expenditure in India. For context, 8 years back, India's capex allocation was barely 3 lakh crores. So this is a big leap. It's a clear sign that the government is willing to do the heavy lifting when private investment remains low. Investment by the private sector. Another challenge is defense. We have growing security threats from China and Pakistan, so defense has also seen a record allocation of 7.85 lakh crores. It's a much needed response to India's strategic requirements. The third challenge is tariffs. And on this front, we have to say the budget falls short. Yes, they've granted relief to SEZs or special economic zones. They're basically meant for exports, but now they can sell more in the domestic market. And this is an unusual step to offset the tariff hits, perhaps. Beyond this, some industries have also seen duty cuts. So yes, the government has intervened, but only selectively. There are no big measures or bold bets to counter the tariff shock. The next challenge is a decline in foreign investment, and this too has not been adequately addressed. We've already told you that the markets have given a thumbs down to the budget. Stocks fell because the STT or the Securities Transaction Tax has been hiked. But beyond this, overseas investors continue to pull out money from India. Last month alone, they withdrew $3 billion from the Indian markets. And last year, a total of $18 billion was withdrawn. So there is an exodus of foreign investors, and the budget fails to effectively plug this leak. It is encouraging the Indian diaspora to invest. The investment ceiling for them has been raised from 5 to 10%. NRIs can now hold up to 10% of any company that they choose to invest in. But it wasn't enough to cheer investors. The larger focus, as we've seen, is on self-reliance or Atmanirbharta. The government is betting on building capacity, on scaling Indian industry. There is support for semiconductor manufacturing, rare earth mining, nuclear energy, supply chain infra like railways and shipping containers. And this is a good step in the long term. But the problem is, these are all long-term bets. They're only as good as their implementation. And our record on this front has been patchy. To add to the disappointment, there were no big bang announcements, no significant steps to open up the economy in these areas and to attract foreign or private investment. Also for the middle class, there is little to cheer. There's no relief on indirect taxes, no increase in exemptions or rebates, no tax cuts, no major incentives. And that matters very much because private consumption still drives India's economy. In September 2025, it made up over 62% of our GDP. Today's budget has no new measures to boost consumption in India. Environmental spending has also taken a hit. The budget to fight air pollution has been slashed. Last year, it was around 1,300 crore rupees. This year, it has been reduced to a little over 1,000 crores. And this is a sharp cut at a time when poor air quality is a serious crisis across the country. So where does that leave us? We'd say this is a budget with big numbers. But at the end of the day, spending is not the outcome, delivery is. And that is where the budget will be judged. No prizes for guessing what today's joke is. That too is the budget. The internet has a lot to say about it. They probably thought they would make memes while the finance minister spoke. But her speech today was quite short. So the meme output had to be fast. And the result looked like this.
The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this new year, Firstpost America gets a new look. I'm Kerry Johnston, and this is Firstpost America.